So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Boris Johnson being broke, despite the fact that he's in the top 1% of earners in the UK. He's broke, and this is a guy who he himself said that he needs about 300,000 to make about £300,000 a year just to stay above water. And this is also a guy who didn't want to increase things like universal credit, didn't want to help poor and working class people in this country, and yet this is a guy who needs a lot of money just to live, because his habits are expensive. He doesn't understand money management. He was born into wealth. And he will never understand what it's like to actually be poor. He could make changes in his lifestyle that would actually save him a lot of money, but he chooses not to. And this is what makes me think that he will not be Prime Minister after 2025, because he simply doesn't have the funds to be able to live in terms of his lifestyle. He's, like Mayweather in some ways. His outgoings are too much compared to his income. It doesn't matter how much money you make when you spend too much, when you're an idiot. But yeah, we'll dig into this article now. So this is from the Sunday Times. It says that 2 comments made by people in Downing Street as the cash for curtains, that's Boris Johnson's flat revamp affair, intensified, sum up the predicament in which Boris Johnson finds himself this weekend as he faces growing calls to spell out how the refurbishment of the flat he shares with his fiancée, Carrie Simmons, was paid for. Given that Boris Johnson previously had said, he can't afford a nanny for his kid Wilfred, how the hell did he find 58 grand for his flat refurbishment, especially since people say it actually costs more than that? So when the story emerged, from his own, he paid the 58,000 from his own pocket on top of the 30,000 annual allowance funded by the taxpayer. So he needed around, about 90k just to do up his flat, and apparently it's a lot more than that because there were other invoices. This is crazy. Number 10 aide, who remains loyal to Johnson, said simply, the bottom line is he can't afford to be Prime Minister because he's bad at money management. He doesn't know how to budget properly. He's never learned how to. His dad is rich. He doesn't need to know. Dominique Cummings said about the flat refurbishment, it was unethical, to have a donor pay for the flat refurbishment. He said it's unethical, foolish, and possibly illegal to get donors secretly to help fund the work. Boris Johnson wanted to make like a charity fund for it, and it's open corruption, because if these people donate to you to do up your flat, what do you think they want in return? When people are offering you thousands of pounds of money, rich people, they don't see it as a donation, they see it as an investment. They want something from you. We've already seen that with the Tory government giving contracts to their friends and family and to donors during the pandemic. This is what they want over you. It's the same thing that they did with Donald Trump when he became president. He owed debts to people. They could try and get to him. Another person says that lots of people wanted Boris to come clean and get everything out there quickly, but he won't do that. His stock response on anything to do with his personal life is don't answer the question. And to be fair, it's kind of worked for him. He's done a lot of stupid stuff, and he refuses to answer the question, and eventually people get bored. People get bored of it. That's why his strategy works, because the media get bored of it, people get bored of it, and they stop talking about it. And the thing with this story is we have to keep talking about it, because this is important. Because if Boris Johnson had taken a donation from someone, which it looks to be the case, it's pretty open corruption, don't you think so? That a rich person has offered Boris Johnson to pay Boris Johnson about 58 grand to do up his house. The place where his kid runs around, the sofa he sits on, the table he eats on. Don't you think that, that when that person calls Boris Johnson to ask for a favour, Boris Johnson's going to say no? The combination of these two facts leaves the Prime Minister engulfed in a swirling mess where the public and private overlap. Senior Tories say the affair had shined a light on Johnson's financial difficulties and the chaotic way he runs his Downing Street team. Opened rifts at the heart of government, because you got to think a lot of people would be against this sort of scheme. Because Dominique Cummings, the guy who brazenly lied in the 2016 general election, harvested massive amounts of data in order to hit people with specific ads. I don't know how much of that was even legal. Even he said this is wrong. That's how bad it is. It goes on to say, on the face of it, the idea that a prime minister cannot afford to do the job on a salary of £157,000 and £157,372 is ridiculous. It's true, it is ridiculous, but it's clear that when the bill for the refurbishment overseen by the boho chic designer Lulu Lytle, and it's hella ugly, by the way, in case anyone didn't realise, the flat is hella ugly. Arrived last year, Johnson was unable or unwilling to pay because it cost him that much, because the flat is hella ugly. The initial invoice was settled by the Cabinet Office. The Conservative Party then refunded the excess amount of £58,000. At the same time, Lord Brownlow of Sherlock Row gave the same amount to cover the cost. So this was basically done through multiple levels where one person paid for it and then another person reimbursed them. If we look at how much salaries are of the chief executives are paid for each country, kind of the prime minister / president, he's in amongst the top earners. UK gets paid more than France, the Netherlands, Israel, Italy, etc. In New Zealand, you can see the other leaders make a lot of money, people like Jacinda Ardern, etc. But he's not, Singapore's ridiculous. But the rest of them, this isn't he's not on a pauper salary. You can't pay your prime minister, the leader of your country, a bad salary because then they're more open to corruption. But the thing with Boris Johnson is he's always open for corruption. Senior Tory sources say Johnson has taken out a commercial loan to repay the money he owes to the party. So again, this is now a bank or a lender that has more leverage over him, because chances are he wouldn't want to pay back that loan. When his time ends as Prime Minister, he's going to try and do something here, a deal of some sort, in order to get rid of this loan, because he's bad with money. Number 10 refuses to confirm or deny this claim. That means it's probably true. That means he probably took out a commercial loan to pay off the £58,000, even though he's rich. The Ministerial Code of Conduct stipulates that even bank loans should be registered to avoid conflicts of interest, because you've got to imagine if that bank calls up Boris Johnson or that lender calls up Boris Johnson and says, look, you're behind on a repayment, or do you want to make this money, this debt disappear? Here's what I need you to do. It is a conflict of interest. The Register of Ministerial Interest has not been updated since July last year. So Boris Johnson wanted this story to go away, but whoever leaked the information is the one that is going to force Boris Johnson to declare on the conflicts of interest register that he owes money. Because if Boris Johnson was open about this, like the people trying to claim that there's no issue here, so why didn't he put it on the conflict of interest register? Clearly he didn't want people to know about this. Let's be real, people. Rumours persist that the total cost of the work was pushing 200k, so that's almost 4 times the amount we were told. A claim flatly rejected by Downing Street, so probably not true. Probably. However, Tory sources say there was a second invoice. That's something that Dominic Raab kind of denied and said, we don't know, we need to wait, blah, 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 which he's right to an extent, but maybe he should be asking his boss, is there another invoice? Believed to be a Conservative donor directly with the supplier, so someone paid off the supplier by the looks of things. Downing Street refused to comment on this claim, so chances are the money is not the right amount, but the second invoice did exist and someone else did pay it off. And if it's anywhere near that 200 grand claim, then he most likely took out a huge loan to pay off his debts. If this is the case, Johnson would have received a benefit in kind, which he would be required to register not only with the parliamentary authorities, but also on his tax return. So clearly people need to start investigating this stuff. Benefits received up to April last year would have to be in his tax return submitted in July. And if it's not in his tax return, that means he tried to hide this, which sounds a bit illegal, if you ask me, but I'm not a lawyer. But it sounds very illegal. Ben Elliott, the Tory party co-chairman, let it be known that he thought the idea was a disaster. Dan Rosenfield, the chief of staff, felt the refurbishment was a crazy arrangement. So these people clearly are, trying to throw Boris on the bus, saying, this wasn't my idea, bro. This wasn't my idea. Very strange stuff indeed, which tells you that these people think it was wrong, and they're openly saying it, which means that it puts Boris in a more awkward position, because these people's quotes can be brought up by the media if the media actually want to do a good job. Johnson has told friends that he needs to earn about 300k a year, twice his salary, to keep his head above water. This is the minimum he needs, which is crazy. No one should need that amount of money to keep the head above water. It's ridiculous. A former number 10 insider said it was received wisdom that he's permanently broke. How are you this rich but so poor at the same time? I don't understand how these people function. Johnson's salary puts him close to the top 1% of earners in the UK. He's in the top, I think he's in the top 5%. Yet he makes less than Angela Merkel and Joe Biden. Well, their jobs are a bit more difficult because, they are the head of their state. The UK isn't like that. The Queen is head of state. Therefore, the Queen takes some of the money from the taxpayer. If that wasn't the case, then the Prime Minister probably would get paid more. So, it's a bit of a stupid argument the Tory guy for paying here. But when it comes to his, after national insurance and stuff like that, he makes about £95,000 a year, which is a lot of money. His salary is topped up by his royalties that have amounted to about £25,000 since he became Prime Minister, so he's easily making well above £110,000. In addition, he received 28 grand in personal gifts and donations in that time, according to the Register of Interest. So why has he registered these interests but not the bigger ones, huh? Tells you a lot. That includes a 15 grand trip to Mystique in December, courtesy of the Carphone Warehouse co-founder David Ross. So another question we need to ask ourselves is, why is this man paying 15 grand for Boris Johnson to go on a holiday? To buy influence. That's subject to a parliamentary commissioner for standards, which, you shouldn't be allowed to do this sort of stuff. Any MP, especially not the Prime Minister, shouldn't be allowed to do this stuff. Other costs associated, he must pay a tax liability for heating. He doesn't pay rent in his number 11 flat. That's, that would be his most expensive cost. Living in London, the rents are ridiculous, especially central London. So he doesn't have to pay his most expensive thing, which would have been rent. So this man has no excuses for claiming that he can't afford to live. So he's got to pay for heating, lighting and maintenance, which comes to about 7 grand a year, which is nothing compared to his salary. He also pays council tax, about £1,655 a year. Johnson covers the cost of any food and drink for personal consumption, even if it comes from the Downing Street kitchens, which seems a bit strange. I thought the taxpayer would cover something like that, but clearly that's not the case. And maybe they are charging him a lot of money, but, maybe you should learn how to cook, Bojo the Wonder Clown. As a protected person, he receives taxpayer-funded travel, so this man has no excuse for claiming he's poor. No excuse at all. Johnson's divorce, these are personal decisions that he made. Maybe he should have been more careful about who he married and who he had relations with. His second divorce from Marina Wheeler is understood to have been particularly punishing. The land registry shows that Wheeler has a right on Johnson's 1.25 million Grade 2 listed home in Thame, Oxfordshire. So if he sells that, she would get some amount of money on it, and the property is on the rental market for about 4 grand a month. So he's making money off that as well. So if he's struggling for money, why doesn't he sell the property? Fair enough, his wife would make a cut, but still, Johnson's 4 children with Wheeler have left full-time education, but he has to pay child maintenance for his daughter with art dealer Helen McIntyre. I don't know how you pronounce her name, but it's not important. But, which may run into the 5-figure sum, which is a ridiculous amount to pay for child maintenance, but he's paying about 100k. What's that? 5 figures, about 10k. A year for one of his kids' child maintenance. So in previous years, he would have paid a lot more. But maybe you shouldn't be having children with random women. Maybe you should be more careful, Boris Johnson. I thought you're the party of family values, no? It's a crazy guy. Senior Conservatives say donors have been approached about funding other aspects of the couple's lifestyle. A prominent MP received a complaint from a Tory donor that they were asked to foot the bill for a nanny for Wilfred. So again, this should be illegal. He should not be able to ask for donations from donors or the members of the public in order to fund his lifestyle, because that leaves him open for corruption. These people will ask for favours. It's just ridiculous how this man hasn't been done for any of this stuff yet. It is also claimed that Elliot paid for Johnson's personal trainer, Harry Jameson, who charged £165 an hour. Alright, Boris, I'm going to tell you something from one fat man to another fat man, okay? Your personal trainer will not make you skinny. Your personal trainer will not give you a good physique. Your diet will solve most of that. Sort your diet out, big boy. Especially since you have a private chef as well. Come on. Elliot denies both the claims. This is the man who apparently pays for Johnson's personal trainer, which again is wrong. He should not be doing this if he is actually doing it. It's another person buying interest with our Prime Minister. Number 10 says Johnson has paid the cost of Wilfred's childcare and his personal trainer, but did not respond to the queries about whether he paid the original bill or reimbursed someone else. So again, he might be taking out more and more loans to pay off his donors, because he doesn't want to put this stuff on the register, even though he's meant to. even though he's meant to. A full-time nanny or nursery in London is likely to cost £2,000 a month. So maybe Boris Johnson should look at, funding nurseries more from the taxpayer and thinking, look, other people in London can't afford this, other people around the country can't afford these sorts of prices. Maybe if we made childcare more affordable, people could go back into work or spend time doing other things. But, going back into education, but instead we don't. And, this is Boris Johnson, a Tory, being hit by Conservative Party's own policies. Ridiculous. Friends say Johnson rarely spends money on himself, don't know about that, and is often careless with his financial affairs. He was often the sort of person who would forget to pay at the end of a meal or would leave lots of money on the table and then forget to pick up the change. Like, this guy has no idea how to budget, you can tell. You can just tell that he's a massive buffoon. That's what you can tell from that. He gives a lot of control over his affairs to his staff, including his tax return, which sometimes blows up in his face. This man does not know how to organise his life. How he became Prime Minister shows you the stupidity of the electorate in this country. Johnson has been reprimanded in the past for failing to register financial interest in Parliament as required, yet nothing happened. Why didn't you guys do something about it then? The Commissioner for Standards is considering whether to investigate the redecoration of the flat. Absolutely, you should. Absolutely, there should be investigations into this. And his Mystique holiday, which was last year. What the hell are you guys waiting for? And if he does get dinged by this group, the Commissioner for Standards, he may be suspended from the Commons, which is not going to happen. They're not going to suspend the Prime Minister from the House of Commons. Be real. He also faces an inquiry from the Electoral Commission, which says there are reasonable grounds to suspect the party's payment for the flat may have broken the law. Again, the Electoral Commission, a group that have no teeth, so they can say he's guilty, but nothing will happen from it. Some MPs and old friends blame Carrie Symonds, a bit misogynistic, blaming his fiancée. They call her Carrie Antoinette for the excessive spending on the flat, saying Johnson has little regard for opulent furnishings or clothing. The thing is, if he's told people in the past that he needs to make minimum 300k to live, and I don't know how long he's been dating Carrie Symonds, but I don't think it's for that long. This is a man who has excessive expenditure anyways. He might not spend a lot on himself, but he's got a massive amount to pay in child maintenance and stuff like that. So, blaming Carrie Symonds seems a bit stupid. But then again, she was, I think, the one who pushed for the flat refurbishment. And, if Boris Johnson was smart, he would have spoken to her and said, look, this is the amount we can afford, 30 G's, taxpayers' money. But he didn't, and he let her do it, and she hired some bozo who made one of the ugliest looking flats I've ever seen. Refurbishment jobs, again, this is stupid. This whole situation is dumb. They said about her she has champagne taste and a lemonade budget. She does not have champagne taste, man. Maybe on the price list, but she does not have good taste at all. But others say the problem is Johnson's secrecy with senior aides who might challenge him, which is true. After he mentioned the idea of getting donors to pay for the flat, Dominique Cummings said no, and then Boris Johnson stopped speaking to him about it, which, he's looking for yes men, basically. The affair has led to a bunker mentality and swirling suspicion in Number 10. Senior officials are concerned about leaks emerging from Johnson's private office. So clearly, some people don't like him within his private office and are leaking information. We have no idea who. People think it's Michael Gove, but I don't know. The people who voted in the poll I had on the channel thought it was Michael Gove as well, but it's still unclear if it is Michael Gove. Last night, Downing Street denied claims that Johnson lost his temper last week and threw books at his desk. This is about there's other stuff about the bodies piled high in their thousands comment, which apparently Cummings is the one who said if you yelled at him, if you do that, the bodies will pile high in their thousands, which Johnson said, then so be it. So it's possible that the people around the office heard it wrong and they just heard the bodies will pile higher in their thousands. They thought Boris Johnson had said that when it was Dominic Cummings, and then Boris Johnson said, so be it. Others heard the rant insist Johnson use those words, so again, it's unclear, but someone is briefing against him in the press, and that's something he needs to figure out, because if not, it's going to keep being embarrassing for him. I want the leaks to continue, because I want to know what's going on in there. So that's Johnson's salary. Carrie Symonds gets paid 70 grand because she's head of communications at the Aspinall Charity Foundation. So is that her salary? I doubt that's paid by taxpayers, but how are you struggling to live when your combined amounts is about £150,000 between you two? How do you struggle to live with that amount of money per year? It's ridiculous. The couple live rent free. Johnson and Simmons are said to have a mortgage on a £1.3 million property in Camberwell, South London. Johnson has to pay for the upkeep in a cottage in Oxfordshire. So he has properties. If he's struggling for money, he can sell or rent some of these out. He chooses not to. And what we can gather from this article is that he's a liability. He's a walking liability. He's open for open corruption. He'll take donations from people. He doesn't care where the money comes from. Some people think that this Lord Brownslow guy might have got the money from somewhere else. That's possible, but that's speculation. But we know that it seems to be the case that Brownslow is the one who paid for Boris Johnson's flat, and someone else paid another invoice. So altogether, it may be around the 200,000 mark. We don't know yet. But information is slowly drip, drip, drip feeding out into the press, and the more this rages on, I don't know if people will get bored of it. People at Starmer and people in the media have to join the dots about why this is such a big story. This is open corruption on the Prime Minister. These people will ask for favours. So people need to start joining the dots here, otherwise this whole thing is pointless. Talking about these stories is pointless. Someone pointing out here, has Boris Johnson thought about cutting back on avocado toast, or has he considered a job in cyber? Pretty funny stuff, but overall what we can realise is that Boris Johnson has to get a grip on his finances, or just leave. Just at the end of this term, just go, because this is a guy who was making about 800,000 before he became Prime Minister, and now he's struggling to live. Where's all that money gone? And the bigger question is, what do these people want for their donations to Boris Johnson? Because they're going to want something at the end of the day. It's just a question of what. So anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.